The year 2020 was certainly the toughest year in my life and for others as well, as we were faced with the unprecedented situation of a global pandemic and we were cut from everything that we have been familiar all through our life. But as the popular saying goes, the tough time doesn't exist, the tough time doesn't last, but the tough people do. Adgali is launching its prestigious industry handbook, Powerful Influencer, in a digital format today. Powerful Influencer is a definitive compilation of industry leaders who have deciding influence on the course of media, marketing, advertising, and entertainment industry and serve as a shining example for the future generation of leaders. As in the previous year, this year too, we have received a very enthusiastic response from the industry. The powerful influencers straddle across diverse sectors from advertising, media, marketing to digital, broadcast, public relation, and entertainment. The 2020 edition of Powerful Influencers features leaders who have shown a remarkable courage, gumption, innovation, and empathy during the COVID 19 times and have been leading the way in successfully investigating, navigating through the global crisis. To celebrate the launch of Powerful Influencers 2020, we have invited a distinguished set of leaders from the industry who will share the insights on the leadership in the new normal. Can we have the promo, please? Thank you so much, team, for the promo. Now, before we begin, I would like to call upon the leader of AdGully, the founder, the CEO, Bijoya Ghosh, to share a few words. Ma'am.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to see you all logged in. It's said that there's nothing like times of crisis that bring out the best in real leaders. Going through the going through the grind with sheer determination, solidarity, strength, shared purpose, humanity, kindness, and resilience. Indeed, real leaders are forged in crisis. We intend to explore different aspects of leadership in the new normal in this special event today as we set out to unveil India's Powerful Influencers 2020. This year, the year 2020 has been a testing time for all of us. It tested us in ways we had never faced before. While several have faltered or resigned to their fate, there are several brave ones who soldiered on. We have seen our frontline COVID warriors, who are our only line of defense against the virus. We have seen our brave hearts in the armed forces who refuse to budge an inch despite repeated incursions by a mighty neighbor. We saw our national leadership take the difficult decision of shutting down the entire country for several months to stop the spread of the virus. Of course, the cost has been a heavy one. And we have seen entire businesses transition to digital almost overnight, as also start working from home. Even as the country came to a standstill, the wheels of the economy and administration kept turning. We saw, we saw quite a few startups emerge during the time, especially in the digital ecosystem, edtech, e-commerce, etc. There is no roadmap to handle the COVID disruption. There are no guidelines available. No one in this generation, or even the one before, has faced such an unprecedented crisis. Yet, you are seeing several industry leaders charting their own course. They've adapted to the changed circumstances quickly and are learning on the way. There are several key takeaways and learnings here for us all. Of course, there can never be a one size fits all kind of a solution because everyone has been impacted in different ways. Some businesses have succumbed to the crisis, but there are many that are blazing a trail for all. We are honored to have with us today five leaders from the industry across advertising, marketing, and public relations who have devised various strategies to find opportunity in a crisis situation. Their leadership stories and lessons of emerging triumphant in these conditions are indeed inspirational. Please join me in welcoming Josie Paul, Chairman and Chief Creative Officer, BBDO India, Dipali Nair, Chief Marketing Officer, IBM India and Southeast Asia, Nandita Lakshmanan, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer, The Practice, Rajesh Srivastava, former CEO, marketing guru, educator, corporate trainer, and now a newly minted author. Ravi Santhanam, CMO, HDFC Bank. Each of these industry leaders will share with us their leadership mantras for these crisis times and beyond. First of all, I would like to welcome Josie Paul, Chairman and Chief Creative Officer, BBDO India. I don't know how many of you know this about Josie. He was born during an earthquake. So, in a way, he literally faced terrifying times from the moment of his birth. I am told Josie lives by the mantra think like the Navy, deliver like the pirates. He has several such mantras that we are looking forward to hearing today. A warm welcome to you, Josie. The stage is all yours. And thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Bijoya. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for listening to me. You know what? This, for me, leadership is like it's not a Zoom call. You know, it's like a WhatsApp message in today's world. It's a lot more personal and intimate, and I'm sure all of you know that, and you're going through that in your own way. So just think of this 8-minute delivery as a sort of personal message from me to your WhatsApp, like a voice note. So I'm going to read this message out because this is what I would have typed and sent you if we were doing this WhatsApp messaging between us. I'm going to start by quoting good old Bob Dylan, and everyone knows what I'm likely to say, but that song and those lyrics, work for me even today and is like a guiding light. It starts by saying, "Come gather around people wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept it that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone. For the times, they are a changing. And I think it's so brilliant that somebody could write this 50, 60 years ago and it still holds true. We're all going through changes, right? We are being born again. Yeah, it's a period of becoming. In the early days of the lockdown, I was wondering what I was going through. And I'm telling you, everything I say is like a repeat of what you guys are going through too. And I realized at that time that it was like a vipassana. You can't go out, you can't go outward, so you go inward. What we're all going through is rebirth. It's like starting up all over again. And it's beautiful what's happening. Not the COVID thing, but what's happening to us internally. Yeah, it's a crash course for all of us, and we're all graduating at the same time. That's how I try to see what we are going through. Yeah, the other side is going to be slightly different, maybe very different, and it's like we are crossing over to something new. There's a whole new world waiting for us, and that's the excitement, right? We're trying to control it, but honestly, we know we can't, and it's so difficult to predict. So all that I'm saying is really a confession, notes to myself, which I'm sharing with you through WhatsApp, not through Zoom. Yeah, for me, everything is a first, and I've never really felt this way before. I do feel like a creative trainee, to be honest, more than a leader, and I'm eager and excited to see how things go. I feel there's only opportunity and possibilities, and I feel like it's going to be good for me. I mean, I really hope so. But in all this, the nature of leadership is being rewritten, right? It's a time of collective self-discovery. It's amazing what this is doing to us. We are encountering things we've never experienced before. Let me tell you, yesterday, we had to let go of a very big client. We had to say enough is enough. It was not an act of bravado. In these times, we needed the account badly, right? But we had to say thank you, goodbye. Why did we do it? We were seriously concerned about our people who were working on the account. The endless wasted time, effort, and mental harassment was just not worth it. Not in today's world, not in today's time. There's enough anxiety out there anyway. It was not an easy call. In our 12 years of building the agency, we had never done this. It was a test of our culture, our values, our humanity, ourselves. One of our values is to do the right thing, and we believe we did that in the interest of our people and the organization. I'm bearing my soul to you guys. This is how it is. This is a reality, and you all know it, and you're going through it. It's just that I'm saying it. I realize leadership is about support, empathy, and vulnerability. We are dealing with feelings here more than ever before. Managing fear, anxiety, panic attacks, sometimes resignations. Everything is illogical and yet so important. It requires us to really bare our souls, as I said before, to each other. And therefore, while there is a Zoom call and Microsoft Teams and whatever else, in reality, you're dealing one on one at a WhatsApp level. It's all personal. Lots of therapy. We speak openly as a team. We have never come so close as we have now because of these breakdowns and meltdowns. Again, honestly speaking, I don't really know what leadership is, and I'm grateful to Adgali for giving me that. But it's not something I fully understand because I'm just a follower. We follow a dream or a mission or a calling, right? Something that's within you. And people who are aligned to that same thing walk alongside you or with me. And as a follower, we are led by many things, right? Guided by our values, our beliefs, our mantra. And at BBDO, values are our guiding light. It helps us navigate the toughest conflicts and decisions as it did yesterday. And then there is that important mantra which we call the work, the work, the work. It just doesn't sound like a mantra, but it's so simple. It helps us keep ourselves focused on why we really are here while all this is happening. I see that organizational structures are being broken. There is no place for authority. Maybe I'm speaking purely from a creative, agency organization point of view. For example, we can't force people to go on to shoots. We can't force people to do a lot of things. Authority does not have its authority in times like this. There's only equality of hopes and dreams. And for once, I would say, yeah, maybe when the Zoom call happens and everyone has equal squares, I think maybe Zoom is also trying to say that there's equality, because whoever you are, whether you're the CEO of the company or anyone else, everyone comes in the same square. There's not a different square for you. So we're down to that. And like I said, it's getting more and more personal, private, and intimate. And this means that we got to be honest in our day-to-day interactions, honest in the way we do business, and honest about where we are as an organization. So there is a lot of sharing, and how time spills over, and these corridor conversations that used to happen now happen because people need to talk beyond the work. Yeah. We and therefore we look at pitches. There's a lot of pitches that are happening, but we have no issue with the way potential clients are going around asking for pitches, because we see pitches very differently. For us, pitches are the equivalent of chatting in the corridor or water cooler or outside on our terrace where we have in our office, because we see pitches as the in between hours. Nothing to lose, no pressure, and you need that distraction, right? And so that's how we sorted our issues with pitches. It's like, it's cool, it makes us speak to each other in a more relaxed way. We're not born for leadership in these times. It's been thrust upon us. All we're trying to do is keep swimming, or like Bob Dylan said, you'll sink like a stone if you don't. This is when you start putting new codes to your life and a new order, and you realize that nothing is sacred and that you have to keep an open mind. And when I say you, I mean me, that I have to keep an open mind. It doesn't matter where I come from. I've got to look at it from now, the present, and see that our creative wheels are well oiled. See that everyone is working in full force, and my own creativity is also being well used. So enjoy the present is what we say to ourselves, a note to ourselves. Reinvent ourselves so as you go along, and maybe it invites you to reinvent the system. So it's all in flow, it's all very fluid. And the acceptance of that fluidity and not jumping to conclusions too soon is really, I think, where we are right now. So I say, most importantly, don't judge too soon. You can't measure too soon. It's too early to start putting measurements to where you are as a leader or where you are at a creative level or whatever, because the wheel is still in spin. It's all happening at the same time. And again, I borrow and fall back on Bob Dylan's song of the early 60s that says, "Come writers and critics who prophesize with your pen, and keep your eyes wide open. The chance won't come again. And don't speak too soon, for the wheel is still in spin. And there's no telling who that it's naming. For the loser now will later to win, for the times they are changing." And because you're receiving so much during this time from your own people, from the world around you, and your need to sort of create at this time, I try to keep things optimistic by doing a lot. In this 9, 10 months, I've never done, I mean, this is the most I've done in terms of man hours, how I've maximized every moment, including wanting to speak here with you guys. And I'm focusing on the now, because for me, the presence of the present is the most important thing, because you can't sort of fully predict the future. So time to enjoy every detail of what we're going through. And if you try to control the future too much, you have nothing to look forward to, because you're already controlling it and you already think you know when we actually don't know. But I believe the economy will bounce back. And this is just my optimistic feeling, with communication playing a very key role. Government, industry bodies, lobby groups, companies, brands, And all kinds of institutions will agree that the right communication will lead us to greater morale and excitement in the market. You know, increased engagement will impact consumer sentiment positively. This collective optimism will feed the economy. So, yes, communication has the power to change the energy. And this is what I feel, words matter, images matter, stories matter, because every little thing we say adds to the energy and changes the equation of the world. And the only way to beat the COVID blues is to fight it with action. Stay active. And this message is for myself. Stay active. Don't lie back. Exercise. Exercise your mind, brain, heart, soul. Exercise your body, legs, muscles. Jump, move, dance. The best immunity to this, what we're going through, to the COVID blues, is our own inner rock and roll. And that's where I'd like to end for the moment. Thanks. That's my message to you on WhatsApp. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for a wonderful address. And I think somebody in the audience says it very well for a deep, humane, and empathetic address, which is a great way to start.
Thanks.
Our next speaker is Ms. Dipali Nair, Chief Marketing Officer, IBM India and Southeast Asia. Ms. Nair is a sought-after speaker due to her successes in various industries and is widely regarded as an authority in the domain of marketing, digital, and e-commerce. In her current role, she is responsible for driving all marketing and brand initiatives, customer relationship management, and execution for IBM India and South Asia. She also hosts the podcast Being CEO with Dipali Nair, where she chronicles the leadership and transformation journeys of acclaimed CEOs. So who better to share an address on the topic Leadership in the New Normal with the 3A's framework? Ma'am, I request you to take the virtual stage.
Thank you, Varun. I just want to do a check. Can you guys hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Varun, one small correction. I am the Chief Marketing Officer for IBM in India and South Asia, not Southeast Asia.
Yes,
Okay, only
I
South
understand.
Asia. Okay. And I will request Vijaya to correct that in the collaterals also. Okay, thank you for reading out that lovely intro for me, and especially talking about my podcast, because that's a new baby, and I have a lot of warm and fuzzy feelings, therefore about my podcast. 3A's framework, and you all will realize why frameworks are very important to me once I talk about what 3A's stand for. The 3A's stand for authenticity, agility, and ability. And if you just remember these three words and what I have to tell you next, I think whether it is your personal leadership, whether it's the leadership of the organization, or whether it is your brand and the marketing team that you're leading, I think this framework can help you decide, are you on the right path? Are you on the right journey? Because I sincerely also believe that leadership is not a goal that you kind of achieve at, it's a journey. You have to be constantly moving towards a certain other goal for you to be leaders where you are. So let's analyze, and let me break this up for you. First, let's talk about authenticity. Authenticity to me, when I talk about, is about the purpose of the brand. It is the art of marketing, as we all know. And it is what leads to customer centricity. It is what, let's say, what Josie spoke about, which is the whole warmth, the empathetic, framework. It is stuff that we all know, and we normally refer to as in saying authentic voice of the brand, authentic voice of the organization. It is about things that we refer to when we say that that person comes across as very authentic, right? So that's the authentic part of it. Now, if you're looking at the new normal, if you're looking at 2 years from now, 6 months from now, I think the brands and marketing teams and organizations that will stand the test of time are the ones who remain authentic to their purpose, who've remained authentic to the audience, and who remain authentic to, the needs of the customer and have filled the void, in the market. So much has been written about, authenticity. So I will move on very quickly. And let's remember that that's what I call the art of marketing side. Then there is the science of marketing side. And the two new pillars that I want to talk about is agility and ability, right? So think of them as the science of marketing aspect. Let's talk about agility. One of the most important things that you need to remember is that agility is not equal to speed. It's not about moving from one point to the other as a marketing team and getting there faster. It's not about getting your advertising out fast. It's not about rolling out your campaign fast. It's not about achieving your 1-year target in 6 months. That's not what we mean by agility. That is speed. Okay. Agility is about being able to move in different directions, with speed. Agility is about recognizing that there may be different directions that we will have to, move to. In fact, I'm going to borrow, I think it was Target, and the CMO over there said this actually. To go in new directions fast is what, he defines as agility. Agility means being comfortable with constant change. Agility means being comfortable with chaos, if I may use the term. Agility is about, being very watchful of societal and technological changes, and then saying that my brand needs to, very quickly take advantage of the opportunities that the changes bring, not the discomfort that the changes bring. That is what is agility. And the team needs to be very comfortable in terms of being able to pivot. So imagining the future, so that's what agility should bring to you, be the ability to imagine the future and then to pivot very quickly to take advantage of the opportunities that it presents. So in short, it is all about the culture of, evolution. And, extremely important for us to actually look back at the last 10 years of our lives and say, okay, have we been agile? Because, velocity, that we call velocity of change, even that is becoming very important. I like to explain it slightly differently. And I also, talk about learning agility sometimes. And on my LinkedIn, I've actually done a blog a few weeks back on learning agility. To me, it's also about frameworks that you can carry from one place to another. So this 3A's framework that I'm talking to you about today, which is authenticity, agility that we spoke about, and ability that I want to talk about, after this. This 3A's framework is agile enough to analyze brand, organization, and your own career journey, if I may say so. And I will demonstrate that, in a minute by talking to you about what are the new things, that I have done. Okay, now let's just talk about the last A, which is the ability. When we talk about ability in marketing, there are two things that come to my mind. One is human skills, and second is the tools of marketing. And both are things that we must look at when we are analyzing marketing in the new age, leadership in marketing in the new age. So let's just first look at the tools. MarTech solutions, for example, I think those are the one thing that come to my mind today. 1/3 of the CMO's budget, as far as a Gartner study goes, is now getting into implementation of marketing technology. So it's becoming that important. There are about 8,000 marketing technology or MarTech solutions available. So, I'm talking to you about the supply side, 8,000, and about the demand side. 1/3 of a CMO's budget is, getting into it. So now the thing that we need to look at as far as ability is concerned over there is choosing the right stack and then implementing that stack with a single-minded focus. Why do we need to do this? Because there's digital transformation happening of organizations as well as the consumer. We need to provide enhanced digital experiences to the customer. And the third and the most important thing, marketing will now need to prove ROI on the marketing dollars that are being spent, and MarTech tools are the ones that help you prove your worth inside an organization and give you a seat on the table, right? So like I said, need to choose the right marketing tools which suit your category, your brand, and then the integration. However, I must say that this whole ROI concept really comes home not within months of implementation, but takes some time. And it's also dependent on whether your entire ecosystem is doing the adoption of the tools. Because if you alone are, the one person, the one company who's doing it, but let's say your vendors, your agencies, your partners, the ecosystem that you work within is not doing it, then so that becomes very important. And then let's look at the human ability bit, right? So one spoke about authenticity, agility, and then ability. Now, so ability, I covered the MarTech solutions, and second is the human skills aspect. Okay. Now, when I say human skills, a lot of the time I get asked these questions in seminars saying, okay, what are the skills of the future? And, you can enumerate many. And I think it's like crystal ball gazing. I cannot do it because something that I say today will become irrelevant tomorrow. But yes, just now, content marketing, content creation, UX, CX are all skills that we must add to the marketing team, not necessarily to the person, but we must add to the team because we need to hire experts who do it, right? But what is the less documented part of the ability, according to me, is a CMO's ability to reorg the organization to suit the needs of what needs to be done in future. To ensure that the marketing team is agile, you need to have a reorg, right? And that's where I jotted down the questions, when you're doing the reorg of the team to ensure that they are more able, what are the questions that you must answer for yourself? Okay. Is the structure ensuring that the team acts as unifiers for the rest of the organization? That's what a marketing team's job is. We must act as unifiers for the rest of the organization because the brand comes together over here. Okay. The customer experience comes together over here, and we impact a whole lot of, other teams. The second thing that you must look at is this new org structure enhancing the team's ability to make data-driven decisions? So that is the other part of ability that we must think. With all the implementation of the MarTech tools, with data proliferation happening, is the team really taking decisions on the basis of data? Okay. Then the KRAs that you decide for the team, the KPIs that you decide for the team, do they ensure a growth mindset and the ROI mindset amongst your team? So that's the way you must organize the team. And of course, does this org structure ensure agility and authenticity, like I always say? Now, the last thing that I want to say to you is that adopt this framework for your own careers. One of my favorite authors is Rita McGrath. She's a professor at Columbia University. A couple of years ago, she wrote a book called The End of Competitive Advantage. If you read the last chapter, it will tell you that if you do the same thing over and over again, you will become redundant in about 10 years' time, just like products and brands are becoming redundant if they don't reinvent themselves, right? So I think you must look at your own life and say, am I authentic? Am I agile? Okay. And that's where the learning agility blog that I've written in LinkedIn will come of use. And am I adding ability? And, I looked at this whole framework at the beginning of COVID and I said, Dipali, if you're going to be going and speaking at conferences and talking about this framework, what are you doing with your own life? Are you able to demonstrate this? And I think that was one of the reasons that I was looking at a new area to learn, to acquire knowledge, and to demonstrate that my 3 years framework works. And so that's where the podcast is. Very cleverly, the team that has worked on the podcast along with me, we've identified the niche in the market, the target segment. We identified literature that was not available, whether in books or magazines, that the podcast caters to. We interview CEOs. We only interview professional CEOs. A lot is getting written about the founder CEOs, so we are leaving them aside. But I sincerely believe that India Inc.'s listed companies run because professional CEOs run them. What's their life like? What are their leadership lessons all about? How do they do culture and transformation? How do they do teaming? What success means to them, who inspires them. So that's what I cover in the podcast. And I have learned a lot of data and statistics. Like I told you, data-driven decision making. The podcast is, for example, having a 52% retention rate compared to, let's say, 11% on the platform, where it belongs to. I sincerely recommend that you go through the podcast. 52% retention rate means that 52% of the people who listen to the podcast ever then listen to 100% of the, content. So I'm going to leave it here and once again summarize: authenticity, agility, which is not equal to speed, and ability in terms of the human skills. Your ability to imagine the future, pivot very quickly, do data-driven decision making, and being authentic to yourself and having a purpose is going to be the most important for the team that you lead in the new normal, for the brand that you advocate, and for you yourself. Thank you, Bijaya, for doing this, for inviting me over here. And the last thing I must also admit is that the consumer is changing faster than we are, and it's difficult to keep pace. And that's why the framework becomes extremely important. It helps you think through and pivot quickly. So thank you. With that, I'm going to hand over back to Varun.
Thank you, ma'am. And I think during our coverage this year, we saw a lot of the companies which stood by the 3As, not all three maybe, but one of the 3As. They were both resilient, and some of them even saw tailwinds from the pandemic, while most of the companies saw
Yes,
headwinds.
that's right.
So I can see that framework.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Nandita Lakshmanan, Chairperson and Chief Executive Officer of The Practice. Ms. Lakshmanan has served on various prestigious juries to determine excellence in public relations, including the 57th Cannes Lions International Advertising Festival for the PR category. In 2014, she won the Sabre Individual Award for her contribution to the PR industry in India. The award called out The Practice as unquestionably one of the best PR firms, showcasing a grown-up, ethical approach that has served the firm well in a fast-changing marketplace. Exactly the kind of marketplace that we find ourselves in today. She will share an address on the topic, Reputation, a Valuable Currency in the Trust Economy. Ma'am, I request you to take the virtual stage.
Well, thank you so much, Varun, and to Ad Gully for the invitation to speak today at the event to launch the list of powerful influencers of 2020. And I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to perspectives shared so far by Dipali and Josie. And hi, Josie, it's been a while since we met. We're great connecting here on this platform.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nandita. Thank you.
So in many ways, I think the events of 2020 have made us go back to the basics. I've lived long enough to say that everything about the last decade was, to me, excessive. I'm not sure if many of you share that point of view. But technology has swept us off our feet, introducing us to new ways of living, bringing to us choices, experiences that we never imagined, and pushing us to directions that we choose to follow, albeit a bit reluctantly. So in all of this, while we opened ourselves up to the world that has brought us significant benefits, and really that cannot happen without trust, the ongoing discussions that we hear on a daily basis on protectionism, fake news, the rising street protests, the data privacy regulation, are all indicative of a devaluation of trust. So I find myself saying very often that we came into this pandemic wounded. Global economies were under strain, our communities were polarized, the governments, businesses, and media across the world were going through erosion of trust. The pandemic and the lockdown revealed both the resilience and the fragility of our ecosystems, familial, businesses, societies, etc. It revealed our ability to conform and to resist, and it revealed the excesses and the deficiencies and the inadequacies in our systems. If there was one thing that business leaders were forced into, it was this. The last 8 months brought back, the public in public relations. And I'm not saying this from a practitioner's point of view, but what I observed amongst my client repertoire and also outside, how stakeholder engagement, which sits at the heart of what we do, public relations, was dominant during this time, and it must continue. Leaders from all spheres, be it political, business, institutional, religious, have realized that in times of acute crisis, continuous and direct dialogues with stakeholders is important, And underpinning these dialogues and engagement is clarity of purpose, a deep sense of integrity, and unwavering dependability. And now, in a week, we will all leave behind 2020. And as we do that, I hope we don't leave behind the lessons we've all learned. What I learned personally over the last 8 months is that a culture of transparency and honesty, led by frequent and seamless flow of communication on the state of our business, had us in good stead. We recalibrated our expectations of ourselves, allowing for the emotional, physical, and mental upheaval we all went through. In all of this, there was a deep sense of awareness of our capabilities, our shortfalls, our strengths, and what we could achieve collectively. We focused on what was in our control, which was the way we managed our people and clients, and stopped trying to manage things out of our control. I remember what Mr. Narayan Murthy always said: bad news must take the elevator, good news can take the stairs. So our ability to confront the bad news or the not so good news and find new directions was something that held us in good stead. In all the dramatic twists and turns, we ensured that the trust of our clients and our employees was intact. We were flexible, we adapted, and we were accepting. Leadership in the new normal is actually going to go back to the fundamentals. In a recent discussion at a Spectra conclave, I heard a wonderful conversation between Rama Bijapurkar and Suresh Narayan, the CEO of Nestle India. It was around brand purpose, which is now being spoken about, especially in these times. Mr. Narayanan said, insecurity is loud, strength is silent, signaling that purpose of every brand organization must be pithy, simple, and clear. The coming years will be about silent strength, about walking the talk, about authenticity. The old-fashioned word character will be necessary to shine through in leaders. And out of character, for individuals and businesses and institutions, will emerge reputation that will be an invaluable currency in this rather chaotic world. Reputation. Now let me kind of say that it has to be earned by walking the talk through demonstrable actions, and not just smart, quirky, creative stunts and gimmicks. By taking a stand on issues with unwavering resolution is what will help leaders prove their mettle. Reputation that is earned through demonstrable models and behaviors that exude purpose, integrity, and dependability, the pillars of trust as articulated by Richard Edelman, will be one of the biggest criteria for success of organization and leadership. Increasingly, we're hearing words like empathy, compassion, humility, inclusion, sustainability, diversity, resilience. Soft yet powerful words is in that these must be heard louder and assertively in leadership lexicon. There is need to humanize leadership. I think we've spent way too much time deifying it, imposing messianic qualities on leaders, making leadership authoritarian, a display of ego, and everything that it shouldn't be. It is therefore to pass every action through a litmus test of reputation underpinned by trust. Every action. Take a 360-degree view of every action, how it impacts all stakeholders, employees, communities, investors, customers, supply chain, governments, civil society, everyone. There is much to be done in the years to come. You just have to take a look at the issues around us to know that there is a lot that must be changed in order for us to have an equitable world. And the action must start with those in leadership positions who are well equipped to be the change. Gender diversity in the workplace, appreciation of multicultural and racial sensitivities, divergent points of view on institutional behavior, policy changes, and then the pandemic and its ongoing aftermath we're experiencing. These are but a few of the rumblings. The last few months have taught us that we can't predict what is in store for us. Leadership that thinks, acts in the interest of stakeholders, starting at home, starting with the I. I'd like to conclude by repeating what I said earlier. The new normal is about humanizing leadership And that is going to be good for me, for you, and the world. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for that amazing address. I think there's no denying the importance of a trust economy without which even our digital payments ecosystem, which is growing fast today, would not be possible if your merchants were not able to trust the payments that you're able to. So it's a very important part of the economy. Our next speaker, Mr. Rajesh Srivastava, is a former CEO, marketing guru, educator, corporate trainer, and now a newly minted author. Mr. Srivastava has led a distinguished career as a marketeer, first at United Spirits, now Diageo India, and later as president of J.K. Helen Curtis. He now spends his time imparting his knowledge and experience in institutions of higher learning such as IIM Indore and SP Jain School of Global Management. He recently authored the book, The New Rules of Business, which talks about how some of the most admired brands of the 21st century appended the traditional business paradigms of the time. He will share an address on the topic, Everything You Thought You Knew About Leadership Requires Rethinking. I request you to take the virtual stage, sir.
Hi guys. Hi guys. Yeah.
So we can hear you.
Thank you. Adgali, thank you for inviting me, and friends, thank you, for giving me this stage. So let's quickly get down to what I wish to share with you. Everything that you thought you knew about leadership needs to be re-examined, and I'm going to present to you my case why I think so. The first point. This world is about leaders, and many of us spoke about leaders. Now, what does the definition of leader mean? If you have a leader, then by definition, the leader has to lead. And if the leader leads, then there has to be followers. So a traditional organization before 2005 was what? There was an organization, there was a leader, few set of people who actually took decision and everybody else followed them. But come back to the 21st century and more importantly to COVID times. Do you want an organization where few people take decision and rest of us follow? Which essentially means, do you want a leader and a company packed with followers? Or do you want leaders at all levels, which is the basic concept of distributed leadership? So in 21st century, this concept of one leader packed with followers possibly is getting stale, is getting dismantled. What is coming in its place is an organization which has distributed leadership, which means a company packed with leaders. So you will ask me, listen, how can we achieve this miracle? And the answer is simple. You as a leader have to stop being a leader. Who's a leader? A leader is a person who leads, and therefore followers, when they have a problem, come to him and say, hey boss, I got a problem. And what does the boss do? He gives a solution. And then the follower goes back, implements it, and problem resolved. And this is how the organization progresses. This is the traditional concept of a leader. The leader is supposed to have all the answers. Now, as I said, that system is becoming irrelevant. So the leader has to transform. So what should he transform into? One word. The leader should transform into what I call a coach. What's the difference between a leader and a coach? When a follower comes to the leader and says, I got a problem, the leader listens to the problem and gives him a solution, and the leader and the follower goes back and implements. What has the leader created? He's created a person who's dependent on the leader for getting solutions. He's created a dependent relationship. Let's come to the coach. What does a coach do? The coach is here when the person goes to him with a problem, the coach listens to the problem and does not give him an answer, but poses a question to the person who's come to him with the problem, poses a question. And when the person who's posed the problem tries to answer the question, then he gets the answer to the problem he was facing. And when that happened repeatedly, what has the coach done? He's made this person independent. And not just one person, but almost everybody who comes to him. Therefore, if a leader becomes a coach and he makes the line reporting to him independent, the line below also acts like a coach and makes the people below them independent, what will happen? In due course, the company will be filled with not leaders, a single leader and followers, but will be packed with only leaders. And in 21st century, when you have this distributed leadership concept, this concept will come in handy. I would recommend one book. Unfortunately, I don't have the cover, but I'm showing you this book, $1 Trillion Coach. You must read this book. I sincerely recommend that you read it. So the first point that I wish to tell you is, stop being a leader, transform into a coach. When people come to you with problem, don't give them a solution, pose a question to them. When they answer it, they will get the solution. In due course, they will become independent of you and they in turn will become leaders. Let's go to the second point. The second point. As a leader, what are you doing? You're giving away your power. And therefore, one of the hallmark of 21st century leader, whose one trait is being a coach, is he has to be a giver and not a taker. He has to be a giver, not a taker. You will be astonished and amazed and you will say, hey, listen, givers come last. Isn't that what the popular opinion is? Givers come last. Of course, givers come last. That is what Adam Scott in his book, Give and Take, says. A research was done. A research was done by Adam Grant, which is mentioned in this book, which says that we try to find out about leaders. So they went to organizations and the leadership style was a bell-shaped curve. What they realized is what you also feel, or most of us feel, that the laggards, people who were failures in corporate, they made up the bottom 15%, the extreme left side of the bell-shaped curve. So you were right. The laggards, the people who were losers in an organization, were givers, and they made up the left side of this bell-shaped curve. But in this book, he goes on to say, do you know what? The outliers, the top 15% who actually led the organization were also givers. So what was the finding of this? Givers also make up the laggards and they also make up high performers or leaders. What's the lesson for you or lesson for me? Be a giver. When you give, then you set into motion two things, reciprocal principle and likability principle. If you do good to others, people whom you are trying, so to speak, within quotes, I'm just using it in a limited manner, lead, they will be so happy with you that they will put you on their shoulder and put you up there. So the second thing that I would request you to do is quit being a leader, become a coach. And when you become a coach, don't be a taker, don't be a grabber of everything, but be a giver. The more you give, the better coach, within quotes, a leader you will become. The third point that I wish to say to you, the biggest job that I feel is when you become this new leader that I'm referring to, your job is not to go and do the job, but your job, and the most important job, is to provide meaning to the people who are in your community, who are working in your company. What does meaning mean? Let me just go back to 1960s and John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy said to the Americans that we'll put a man on the moon, my apology, we'll put a man on the moon and bring him back safely by the time this decade ends, which is 1960s. And they did put Neil Armstrong on the moon. Go back to early 1960s when John F. Kennedy, gave this, let's say, this mission statement. But how was it decoded? by people who were responsible for putting a man on the moon. John F. Kennedy was once visiting the NASA headquarters, and what he found was there was a sweeper, a janitor who was sweeping the floor. He looked at the janitor, it was late night. He says, "Janitor, isn't it too late? You are still doing your job?" The janitor looked at John F. Kennedy and said, "Mr. President, you figured it all wrong. I'm not sweeping the floor, I'm putting a man on the moon." Now that is your job. The job that John F. Kennedy did to provide purpose to this janitor is your job, to provide a purpose and a meaning to every single organization so that they come not for the salary, not for the job, but they come to work for themselves. That's the third point. Let's go to the fourth point, and that is the COVID times. Your job now in the redefined leader is not to do day-to-day job that the rest of the people in the company will do. Your job is very simple. Your job is to basically anticipate black swan events. What is a black swan event? An event that has never happened in the past, and you don't know if it can happen in the future, but you still have to anticipate it, my friend. You still have to anticipate it. So you will ask me, hey, has anybody anticipated it? Of course, of course, of course. Let me give you one example. World War II. In World War II, as it progressed, more and more iron and cast iron was required for the defense purposes. And at that time, all car engines were made out of cast iron. And as the war prolonged, more and more cast iron was diverted towards the war purpose. And therefore, one day the government regulation came that no cast iron will be given to car manufacturers. Overnight, they had no cast iron. And if they did not have cast iron, they did not have car engines. If the car engines could not be made, cars could not be made, car could not be sold, their business stopped overnight. That was a black swan event for car manufacturers, right? This was Second World War. So what did one person do, which is Mr. Honda? He looked around and he identified aluminum as a substitute for cast iron. And he made engines out of aluminum, and that worked out to be more wonderful because aluminum was lighter, therefore it gave better mileage. And today, many car manufacturers use that. What's the lesson for you? And here's the question that I want to ask you to ask yourself right now. What if the heart of your business was taken away? Take education. Right now, I'm in education. What is the heart of the education system, whether it's Harvard or IIM or anywhere? Classroom education. And I'd ask myself long back, what if the heart of this education system is taken away? What if classrooms were not there? How would we teach? Let's come to FMCG. What is the heart of FMCG? Distribution. Why do some of these companies control FMCG business? Because they have a very strong distribution network. And I'd ask myself before COVID happened, I mean, I no longer work, but once I was the CEO of an FMCG company, I asked, what if the heart of my business, which is distribution, went away? I couldn't distribute my product. How would I sell? Let's come to entertainment. Did the multiplex companies pose this question before COVID happened? What if people could not come to a single location to be entertained? That is my heart of business, and how will I handle it? Or did any one of these guys, ask them, what if the heart of my business were to be taken away from me overnight? How would I do it? And this question, my friend, is the question that should engage you. Take me as an educator. I have always looked at what if the heart of my business, which is classroom education, went away. I had prepared myself to actually deliver my content online. I started making videos 4 years back. I started writing blogs. I started creating content, digitizing it. Take book. I wrote a book. And in that book, what I had anticipated is what if physical copy stopped selling, which happened in March. I would still continue to sell through various medium, online being one of them, or through webinars like this. So the next question that I want to pose to you is black swan event. And as a leader, have you anticipated a black swan event? Lastly, I therefore want to conclude this by saying, again, it's not my quote. It's a quote from this book, The $1 Trillion Coach. Your designation makes you a manager. Your designation makes you a manager. People make you a leader. Your people make you a leader. And when you become a leader, you should not be a leader. You should transform into a coach so that you make your people leaders. Friend, if I have another 2 minutes, this is where I wanted to conclude. But if I have 2 minutes, I just want to say one more thing, which is very, very important to me. And that thing is, while we lead teams, right, where we say we should coach so that we have a company full of leaders and not followers, where we are a giver, not a taker, where we provide meaning to our people, and where we anticipate black swan events. The last thing that I wish you to remember is that you as a leader, why are you working? Are you working for just a career, fame, recognition, social status? Or are you working with a higher purpose? Do you have a meaning in your job? So I just want to say, you will look at me and say, hey, that's a very nice question to ask. But first, have you asked yourself that question? And the answer is yes. When I started working, I always had a purpose and I had a meaning. And whatever you may call it, my meaning was I wanted to leave India in a better shape than I found it in. I wanted to leave India in a better shape than I found it in. Then I found it in. And from that time I have started working till today. This is what I'm doing. I try to create brands, right, which entertain people and which enrich people's life. So McDowell's Signature, you may have heard of. I give that name. You may have heard of a brand called Bagpiper. Khoob jamega rang jab mil baithenge. We work to make it India's number one, then world's number one. You may have heard of a premix category called Blue Ribbon Do It. We created it. You may have heard of Captain Cook's salt. इसमें है वही जो आपके मनपसंद नमक में नहीं. And then I was CEO of JK Helen Curtis. We created this brand. They entertain people, they enrich people's life. And finally, the last one that I want to say, I was invited to be the CEO of JK Helen Curtis. Deodorant category in 2002 was 66 crore, less than 100. Today, it is about 6,000 crores. I was one of the first person who said, I'll not sell deo, I'll sell perfume, right? And today, perfume is a generic benefit. And what did I do? All this experience that I gathered across the world, I wanted to share. And therefore, I started teaching. I wanted to give away this knowledge. And you will ask me why? Because I have only 5-10 years to live. But if I can transfer this knowledge to my students, then through them, I will live for another 50 years. And that is what my purpose is. My purpose is to transfer my knowledge to my student. And now I have written this book called The New Rules of Business. If you like what I've said, I've written this and much more in this book, my life journey and how great brands are created. Do read this book, because through this, I want to transfer my learning to you. So as a leader, I just want to sum up. Don't be a leader, be a coach. Second thing, be a giver, don't be a taker. Number 3, your job is to provide purpose, meaning to the people who work with you. Your job is to anticipate black swan event. And finally, if you can only do this, provided you have a higher purpose in the reason why you work. Thank you so much. If I've overshot my time, pardon me. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your wonderful business lessons in these short stories. Always a pleasure to hear. Introducing our next speaker, Mr. Ravi Santanam, Chief Marketing Officer, HDFC Bank. This year, Forbes has named Mr. Santanam as one of the most influential CMOs in the world. He is a marketer held in high esteem across the industry and leads the brand communications for India's largest private bank. One of his key responsibilities at the company is digitizing the entire customer experience to drive direct digital origination and fulfillment of the bank's business. He will share an address on brand marketer to being a revenue marketer, how to leverage a crisis. Over to you, sir.
So you're on mute.
Sir, you're on mute. Hi everyone. Mr. Santanam is facing some connection issues, so I request you to hold for a few seconds. He's coming right back. Meanwhile, maybe we can pray up. No, no need to pray for more.
He has just joined. Just a moment.
I can so relate to it because this is what I faced last week when we were doing our MOBEX. The camera actually froze on me.
Vijay, you can ask questions from the audience while the technology is being put in place.
So there are some questions. I think, are these some questions? All I can see praises about you guys. No questions. Dipali, if you can tell me what have been your learnings, last 9 months. Are you there, ma'am?
Yeah.
Tell me the learnings that you've had over the last 9 months. I'm back in my sweater. It's quite cold here. I couldn't manage.
Oh, Vijay, I think actually the 3 A's framework summed it up, but I think the ability to pivot is extremely important. And I think the other thing was that I always, and I completely agree with Rajesh when he said that, you should be a coach to your team. I was very concerned about the team members because I don't think I alone can deliver. The team has to deliver, right? And in my mind was that how do you ensure that you maintain the camaraderie, So how do you replace a water cooler conversation in a digital platform? How do you ensure that people's mental health is taken care of? So we created a lot of interesting programs, within my team. We would do these coffee chats. We would get them to share things, interesting things like, okay, bring what is most precious to you. I had one of my team members bring her wedding lehenga, to us to show on WebEx. We did a lot of that kind of stuff. We even did workshops, online for personality development and so on and so forth. I would do an annual offsite with all my 50, 60 member team, and we did an online version. So you didn't give up on some of the things that you were doing. You just found a digital version of doing it, including the fact that we did a secret Santa also. There were no gifts involved, but instead of the gift, you actually had appreciation, notes going to people, so on and so forth.
That's nice. That's interesting.
Yeah. So my team has ended with one of the highest engagement scores in the world in the IBM, marketing world. So, but I do think that's the most important thing, most important learning and the most important thing to do when times are tough. I hope Ravi is back on air. Ravi, we can see you. You should do a trial. Hear you or not.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Ravi, we can. And I was doing a filler for you.
Thank you so much, because it was working superbly when I was hearing from Joshi to all of you people, and when I started speaking, everybody said you're on mute. Anyway, thanks. I think this is what this year has taught us in terms of being very resilient in terms of coming out of these kind of situations. It has been tough for sure. And we all have learned a lot of things in the last 9 months that we have never learned in the last 9 years. New vocabularies have been added to our language: lockdown, pandemic, social distancing. And this is one of those kind of events. It happens once in a lifetime for many of us, and it does have an impact on the way human beings conduct themselves. As human beings, we are all creatures of our own habits. And as Charles Duhigg in his book on habits says, a habit is a cycle of a cue, an action, and a reward. The habitual way of doing things, when you get up in the morning and brush your teeth, for example, makes us not waste energy and helps us in smooth conduct of our day-to-day lives. This habit formation has been studied extensively by marketeers, and it has been used to drive consumer actions. But what this pandemic has done is, for a long period of time, we have never had this kind of an event which has changed the way we do many things. The assumptions that we have been using to conduct our day-to-day lives have been actually destroyed. BJP dominated the conversation in the early days of the pandemic for almost every one of us. And I am talking about Bartan, Jadu, Pocha, and not BJP as in the political party. And our respect for people who do these kind of household work increased dramatically. And many new behaviors set in because of this pandemic. And for a substantial set of people, this new way of doing things is going to stay forever for them with them. The biggest change, which many of us know about, is the adoption of digital. And from the banking industry, we can say how digital has actually been accepted tremendously, whether it is digital payments, whether it is contactless payments, even the internal organization in terms of various functions within the organization started seeing digital differently. Even the customers who are willing to transact digitally, only when it comes to money transfer, have started moving towards making application forms, opening accounts digitally. With this background of what the pandemic did, what is this revenue marketeer that I talk about? What is this shift from a brand marketeer to a revenue marketeer? What does this term signify for all of us? Traditionally, people on the marketing side of a business were considered storytellers, brand folks, creative folks. And all these people talked about was how consumers feel about the brand. They measured awareness, consideration, share of voice, share of expenditure. And they put in their heart and soul to make the consumer voice heard in the corridors of power. And also the companies made products or services that the consumer actually needs. Internet, social and digital and media changed all of that. It added a new dimension. What is the dimension that added? Everyone had a device in their hands 24/7. And many marketeers started seeing this device as a screen first, implying another option to present your product service to the customer. As technology developed, ability to engage on the screen with the customers in real time started. Finding the right customer at the right time became more technologically driven. And when Dipali was talking about ability to get lots and lots of MarTech investments, technology tools, all these started coming in. Along with this came the digital only business models. The screen to communicate actually became the screen to engage in a conversation, convert the conversation into an interest, convert the interest into an action to purchase, and fulfill through offline modes. We all know about Urban Clap, Urban Company for today, Swiggy, Zomato, all these people. So with this change, the marketeer had a choice. The choice of actually doing communication or a choice of running a campaign that can drive revenues as measurements are in place. Born was the revenue marketeer. So I define revenue marketeers are those who directly drive measurable sales revenues through their marketing campaign. Let me repeat, revenue marketeers are those who directly drive measurable sales revenues through their marketing campaign. This movement to revenue marketing luckily did not stop only the new age business models. Many traditional business models have found ways and means of augmenting their sales efforts with revenue marketing. Whether it is a building material supplier who generates a lead for supply of cement or steel or electrical hardware during these pandemic times, or a bank selling a loan. Most traditional industries have also jumped onto this train and are at varying stages of maturity, some from just generating leads on to some to complete end-to-end identification to fulfillment to advocacy. We believe there are three broad steps to become a revenue marketer. First, get customers to your property. We call it traffic. Engage with them to convert the traffic into leads. Third step, convert the leads into sales. As I indicated earlier, the crisis that we faced has forced substantial behavior shifts in humans. Fear and greed are two of the biggest emotions that drive our way forward in terms of trying out new things. And in this pandemic, both these emotions were really up sharply. I want to share with you how you can leverage this crisis and what we need to do in this crisis and what we have done in this crisis in our journey to become a revenue marketer. I'm going to talk about 5 steps, 3 steps which are for building yourself and 2 which are for building your teams. So let me start with the first step. The first step is to have a mindset to question everything. A mindset to question everything. We use this opportunity to question everything. There are no rule books that were available to us when the pandemic struck. We couldn't go back in history and find out what happened so that we can have a rule book we have a precedent which we can copy. No, there were no rule books. So there were many things which we have to do for the first time. For example, at HDFC Bank, we put our brand logo on the ground for a safety grid campaign. We worked with A.R. Rahman to create a song. HDFC Bank never did it. But both these things allowed people to think and feel that there is something which is different, which is happening in this organization. This organization is going to become different. Everything can be questioned. If it has not been done in the past, that's not a problem. We can do it. The organizational mindset to accept different things and different ways of doing things increased dramatically. Step number 2, articulate your vision again and again. Use every opportunity, event, incident to narrate your story on how consumers are changing and what we are doing in marketing to leverage this changing behavior for better business. Repeatedly articulate how your way of thinking and doing is rooted in consumer behavior and is another step to drive revenues. People did question brand advertising versus performance marketing. What is the difference? Do we have to do brand advertising at this point of time now? What we always used to answer is brand advertising for us is nothing but talking to tomorrow's customers. Bottom of the funnel advertising and campaign is all for today's customers. How do we actually talk to tomorrow's customer? That's brand advertising. Why do you want TV? Because that's also going to reach a lot more customers at one go. Always articulate your vision because of the fact that consumer behavior is changing. Step number 3, and this is one of the most important steps in our view. Be interested in others, don't be interesting. As marketeers, we always want to create stories which are very interesting, but are we interested in others? Everyone's understanding of the event and its impact on them, both in the short term and in the long term, differ very much. Make a point to understand their viewpoint and then offer to participate in mitigating their pain. For example, our entire sales force was suddenly left with only one way to contact the customers, which is by way of a phone call. They can't go and meet physically the customers. So what do you have to do? We, at that point of time, showcased how our analytics can help in terms of finding the right product fit for the customer basis, what we observed as behavior from the data that we have. What is it that the causation of that behavior and what are the interventions that we can do? Moment we are able to showcase our work as something that will help them mitigate their pains, they were gleeful adopters of that. And what we got in return, because we were interested in them doing well, we got in return a lot of feedback from the consumer in terms of our ability to predict for our customers. Once the campaign feedback comes in, it goes back into the model to become better next time. And the last 2 steps of what you build for your teams. First is build alliances. You will know that there are always very many significant influencers in every organization. They're also studying consumer shift behavior in the consumer shifts. And they're also having their own views on how the organization needs to respond or to adopt to leverage the shift. Seek them out and get them to be your partners and engage with them to garner their support for whatever you want to do. Again, an example, we all knew that at the end of the day, converting leads into sales depends a lot on having a phenomenal digital front-end interface with the latest technology in place. And we had to have a lot of high-end analytics capability in place. Very happy because of the alliances that we built up. We could get both in place during the pandemic, spending lots and lots of investment, top-end investment dollars, and we were almost ready to get them into production quickly. This all because of the alliances that we built in. And the last one, which Deepali talked a lot during her conversation, build learning agility. Remember, there is no one way of doing things. People are keen to change. Many things have changed. But structurally, how we are going to retain and sustain this ability to test and learn, for us, that is learning agility. So we have to figure out there is a way of working, which is the agile way of working, which made us actually come together across multiple functions: product, business, sales, operation, compliance, legal, regulatory. How do you bring all of them together? How do you enable them to see the action, the result, and then what needs to be changed? How they collectively bring together their ability as a team to look at the data and change and do their best for us. This learning agility needs to be built in the organization. So let me end this speech of mine with these final words. Every crisis is an opportunity, and one should never let go of that. One should leverage them to change the way we work to become a revenue marketer, and make sure your actions are rooted in understanding the consumer behavior. You have the right mix of technology and people skills, resources available. Invest in a culture of learning agility to keep moving forward. Thank you. Over to you, Varun.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing the 5, I think, ways to become a revenue marketer or think like a revenue marketer during this time. I think the situation that was caused by a pandemic also caused a kind of collective awakening, which made everyone think of these things, but they may not have put a finger to it as keenly as you have. That was our last speaker of today. Now, I would like to once again call AdGully's founder and CEO, Vijaya Ghosh, on stage to unveil the 2020 edition of Powerful Influencers. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Varun. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. I loved each one of you's speech, that you gave. There are so many learnings that I had personally. I'm sure my team has a lot of takeaways. I myself have so many takeaways. Well, during the starting of pandemic, a little before that, I did a course from Harvard on leadership. Whatever I learned was all, certain theories, but what you guys have shared with us today are practical things. I do my bit on a daily basis. Pandemic threw a spanner in our work and our style of working, but we quickly rustled up things. And I thank my team, all of them. They stood by me and they said, ma'am, let go of office. Ma'am, we are there with you. I think the whole team was stretched. Whatever we did right from day one, webinar to till date, my team has stood by me in everything. And I thank all of you guys. Thank you, Deepali. Thank you, Josie. Thank you, Nandita. Thank you, Ravi. And thank you, Rajesh sir, for being with us today. Before I bid goodbye to all of you, I'll launch the book for which all of you guys have waited for quite some time. So now's the moment. Deepali, my speech here. I read it again. Now's the moment to reveal India's Powerful Influencer 2020. The industry leaders who led from the front, helping agencies, clients, businesses navigate through the uncharted waters. This is the 3rd edition of AdGully's special endeavor to bring together leaders and experts who are changing the face of this industry and recalibrating the ground rules by their innate business acumen, calculated risk-taking, and game-changing strategies. All this in a special compilation. Keeping in mind the market situation, this year we're releasing Powerful Influencers in an ebook format. For ease of coverage, the book has been divided into 8 sections: advertising and media, marketing, content creators, public relations, broadcast, digital, print, and top voices. Some names featuring in the book are very familiar names for us, and we have been interacting with them throughout the very tough year. There are some who fought through the disruptions to bring about a sea change in a way business is conducted and astounded all with their brilliant ideas. So, without much ado, here's a very exclusive preview of Powerful Influencers 2020. Thank you, friends. Thank you for being with us. Madhura, over to you.
Hi, everyone. To access the digital edition of Powerful Influencers 2020, you may navigate to the address www.adgully.com/powerful-influencer-2020. With that, ladies and gentlemen, this event has concluded. But before you sign off, please bear with us a moment as we thank those of you who made this edition of Powerful Influencers possible. First, I'd like to thank our sponsor, India TV. I'd like to thank our wonderful speakers for being a part of the launch event today. And lastly, I'd like to thank our dedicated team at AdGully who have been working on the contents and design of this book. Thank you for joining us attendees for our last event of the year. Watch this space for latest stories and analysis on advertising, marketing, media, and entertainment. Goodbye.